Zara pressed her thin fingers against the glass wall of the hydroponic bay and watched the busy corridor outside. Hundreds of different aliens walked past her hiding spot, but none of them looked her way. She was invisible to them, which was exactly how she wanted it. The space station Nexus Prime was enormous. It had thousands of levels, millions of rooms, and creatures from 40 different worlds. Some aliens looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs. Others were made of living rock that glowed with inner light. There were beings with tentacles instead of arms, creatures with 6 eyes, and things that floated in the air without wings. Zara was different from all of them. She was Kalani, and her people were known for being soft and weak. Her skin was pale, blue, and seemed to shine slightly in the light. Her eyes were large and silver, and her hair was white as snow. She was small compared to most aliens on the station, barely reaching the chest of an average Vrex warrior. She worked in the hydroponic gardens, taking care of the plants that helped clean the air and provide food for the station. It was quiet, work, and she was good at it. When she touched the plants, she could feel if they were healthy or sick. She could sense what they needed to grow strong. This was her gift as a Kalani, but most aliens thought it was useless. The door to her section slid open with a soft hiss. Zara's heart jumped in her chest as 3 Vrex warriors walked in. They were tall, covered in dark green scales, and had sharp teeth that showed when they smiled. The one in front was Krex, the worst of all the bullies on the station. "Look what we found," Krex said, his voice rough like grinding stone. "The little plant girl is hiding again." Zara tried to move toward the back exit, but another Vrex blocked her path. She was trapped between the plants she loved and the aliens who made her life miserable. "Please," she whispered. "I'm just working. I haven't done anything wrong." "Wrong?" Krex laughed, and the sound made Zara's skin crawl. "You exist, that's wrong enough." The other 2 Vrex thought this was very funny. They knocked over several plant containers, spilling dirt and water across the clean floor. Months of Zara's careful work was destroyed in seconds. "Clean it up," Krex ordered. "Use your hands." Zara got down on her knees and started gathering the scattered dirt. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Crying would only make things worse. "Faster," one of the other Vrex said, kicking more dirt around. "We don't have all day." This was not the first time. It happened almost every week. Sometimes it was the Vrex warriors. Sometimes it was the Thokari, the rock people who thought emotions were a sign of weakness. Sometimes it was aliens she didn't even recognize who had heard that Kalani were easy targets. Zara had tried to report the bullying to station security, but they didn't care. Commander Vorth, who ran the station, told her that she needed to be stronger if she wanted to survive in space. The galaxy was a hard place, he said, and weak species had to learn their place. "I heard your people are good at calming angry animals," Krex said, watching Zara clean. "Is that true?" Zara nodded without looking up. It was true. Kalani could sense the emotions of other living things and help them feel calm. It was supposed to be a valuable skill, but most aliens saw it as proof that her people were too soft for the real world. "Good," Krex said, "because we have some entertainment planned for you tomorrow. There's a wild screed in the lower levels that needs calming. You're going to do it while we watch." Zara's blood turned cold. Screets were dangerous predators with claws like knives and no fear of anything. Calming one would be incredibly dangerous, even for an experienced Kalani. She was still young and had never worked with anything more dangerous than an angry farm animal. I can't," she said. "I'm not trained for that." "You'll learn," Krex said, "or you'll get hurt. Either way, it will be fun to watch." The 3 Vrex left, still laughing. Zara remained on her knees in the dirt, surrounded by her ruined plants. She wanted to cry, but what good would it do? There was no one to help her, no one who cared if she lived or died. She had tried so hard to fit in on the station. She did her work well, stayed out of everyone's way, and never caused trouble. But it didn't matter. To most aliens, she would always be just a weak Kalani who deserved whatever happened to her. Zara spent the next 2 hours cleaning up the mess and replanting. what could be saved. Her back hurt from bending over and her hands were cut from broken containers. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the hurt in her heart. When she was finally alone again, she allowed herself to cry. Tears ran down her blue cheeks as she touched the damaged plants. Some of them were dying and she could feel their distress through her gift. They were like her in a way, trying to grow in a place that didn't want them. As night cycle began on the station, Zara made her way to her small quarters. The corridors were still busy, but she kept her head down and avoided eye contact. She had learned that looking at some aliens the wrong way could be seen as a challenge. In her room, she sat on her narrow bed and stared at the metal walls. Tomorrow, she would have to face the Screet. She knew Krex and his friends hoped she would. Be hurt or killed, it would be one less weak alien cluttering up their perfect station. But there was nowhere to run. Space was vast and cold, and she had no ship, no money, and no friends to help her. She was trapped on Nexus Prime with aliens who saw her as entertainment, at best and a pest at worst. Zara closed her eyes and tried to find the inner peace her people were known for. But peace seemed very far away. All she could feel was fear, loneliness, and the certainty that tomorrow would be even worse than today. She didn't know that everything was about to change. She didn't know that a ship from a world called Earth was approaching the station, carrying beings who would see her very differently than the rest of the galaxy did. For now, she was just a frightened young alien, alone in the dark, wishing she could be anywhere else in the universe. The alert sirens echoed through Nexus Prime as a new ship approached the docking bay. Zara heard them from her hiding place in the lower maintenance tunnels, where Krex had told her to wait. Her hands shook as she pressed against the cold metal wall. In a few minutes, the Vrex warriors would bring the angry Screet, and her nightmare would begin. High above in the command center, aliens gathered around the viewing screens. A strange ship was requesting permission to dock. It was unlike anything they had seen before, built with smooth curves and clean lines. The beings inside called themselves humans, and they came from a planet called Earth. Commander Vorth studied the ship with his glowing rock eyes. The Thokari leader had never heard of this species, which was unusual. His people kept records of every known race in the galaxy. They claimed to have developed faster than light travel independently, his assistant reported. No contact with galactic civilization until now. Interesting, Vorth said. Grant them docking permission. We will evaluate their technology and determine their place in the galactic hierarchy. The human ship, called UES Liberty, docked smoothly at Bay 7. 3 humans stepped out, wearing simple blue uniforms with strange symbols on their chests. The leader was a tall man with dark hair and calm eyes. His name was Jake Morrison, and he had been a soldier on his homeworld before becoming an explorer. With him were Lisa Park, a woman with short black hair who understood machines, and Dr. Ben Carter, an older man with kind eyes who helped sick people get better. They looked around the massive docking bay with wonder, seeing dozens of alien species for the first time. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," Commander Vorth said as he approached them. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "I am Commander Vorth. We will discuss trade agreements and your species' position in galactic society." Jake nodded politely, but he was not really listening. His eyes were taking in everything around him. He saw how different aliens treated each other, the way some species stepped aside for others, and how some beings kept their heads down in fear. "If you don't mind," Jake said, "I'd like to explore the station a bit first, get a feel for the place." Vorth's glowing eyes flickered with annoyance. Most new species were eager to establish their place in the hierarchy immediately. "Very well, but do not interfere with station operations." Jake walked away from the formal meeting, leaving Lisa and Ben to handle the diplomatic talk. He wandered through the corridors, amazed by the diversity of life around him. But he also noticed something troubling. Some aliens seemed afraid of others. There was a clear system of who was important and who was not. Meanwhile, in the lower tunnels, Zara heard footsteps approaching. Krex appeared with 2 other Vrex warriors, pushing a cage between them. Inside was a Screet, a creature the size of a large dog but with razor-sharp claws and glowing red eyes. It snarled and threw itself against the bars, desperate to escape. "There's our entertainment," Krex said with a cruel smile. "And there's our little plant girl ready to perform." Zara backed against the wall as they opened the cage. The screech bounded out, its claws clicking on the metal floor. Its wild eyes fixed on her, and she could feel its rage and fear like a burning fire in her mind. "Calm it down," Krex ordered. "Make it nice and peaceful so we can pet it." The other, Vrex, laughed and placed bets on how long Zara would last before the creature hurt her. They had done this before with other weak species, and the results were always amusing. Zara reached out slowly with her empathic abilities, trying to touch the screech's mind. The creature was terrified and angry, stolen from its home and trapped in a small cage for days. Its emotions hit her like a physical blow, making her stumble. "Faster," Krex demanded. "We don't have all day." Above them, Jake was exploring the maintenance levels. He had been a soldier long enough to know that you learned more about a place by seeing how it treated its workers than by talking to its leaders. He followed a maintenance corridor downward, hearing voices echoing from below. When he reached the lower tunnel, Jake saw something that made his blood boil. 3 large reptilian creatures had cornered a small, blue-skinned being against a wall. Between them was a snarling predator with claws like knives. The small being was clearly terrified, reaching toward the dangerous animal while the 3 bullies laughed and made jokes. Jake didn't know anything about galactic politics or species hierarchies. He only knew that 3 big beings were tormenting someone smaller and forcing them to do something dangerous for entertainment. On Earth, there was a word for people like that, and Jake had spent his military career fighting them. "Hey," Jake said loudly, stepping into the tunnel. "What's going on here?" The 3 Vrex turned in surprise. They had never seen a creature like Jake before. He was not as tall as them, but something in his eyes made them uneasy. He stood straight and confident, like someone who was not afraid of a fight. "This is none of your concern, alien," Krex said. "Leave now or face the consequences." Jake looked at the small blue being cowering against the wall, then at the dangerous animal, then back at the 3 bullies. He smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "I think I'll stay," he said. Krex stepped forward, trying to intimidate this strange new species. He was used to others backing down when faced with Vrex strength. But Jake didn't move. Instead, he stepped forward too, closing the distance between them. "You want to pick on someone?" Jake said quietly. "Pick on someone your own size." The other 2 Vrex moved to flank Jake, but he had been in situations like this many times before. He shifted his weight, ready for whatever came next. His calm confidence was unsettling. Most species either showed fear or anger when threatened. This human showed neither. "I don't think you understand how things work here," Krex said, but his voice was less certain now. "I understand perfectly," Jake replied. 3 bullies against 1 victim. Same story everywhere in the universe, I guess. Zara watched in amazement as this unknown alien faced down her tormentors. No one had ever stood up for her before. She didn't even know what species he was, but he was willing to fight 3 Vrex warriors to protect her. The screech, sensing the change in the situation, backed toward the wall and stopped snarling. The emotions in the tunnel had shifted from cruel amusement to uncertainty and growing tension. Krex looked at his companions, then back at Jake. They outnumbered this strange alien 3-1, but something about his calm readiness made them hesitate. Vrex respected strength, and this human radiated quiet confidence. "This isn't over," Krex said finally, trying to save face. "Come on, we have better things to do." The 3 Vrex left, pushing their empty cage ahead of them. The screech, still agitated but no longer trapped, ran down a side tunnel and disappeared into the depths of the station. Jake turned to Zara, who was still pressed against the wall in shock. Up close, he could see that she was hurt. There were small cuts on her hands and bruises on her arms. Her large silver eyes were wide with disbelief. "Are you okay?" Jake asked gently. Zara stared at him. In all her time on the station, no one had ever asked her that question. No one had cared if she was hurt or afraid. This strange alien had risked his own safety to help her, and now he was worried about her well-being. Yes, she whispered. Thank you. Jake knelt down so he was closer to her eye level. What's your name? Zara, she said. I'm Kalani. I'm Jake. I'm human. And what those bullies were doing to you was wrong. For the first time in months, Zara felt something other than fear and sadness. This human, this Jake, saw her as a person, worth protecting. He didn't think she deserved to be hurt for entertainment. Why did you help me? She asked. Jake looked surprised by the question. Because you needed help. Isn't that reason enough? And in that moment, everything began to change. Word spread quickly through Nexus Prime about what had happened in the maintenance tunnels. By the next morning, every alien on the station knew that the new humans had interfered with established social order. Commander Vorth was not pleased. You cannot disrupt our carefully balanced society, Vorth told Jake during an emergency meeting. His rocky voice echoed in the small conference room. Each species has its place. The Kalani are weak and they must learn to accept that reality. Jake sat across from the Thokari commander with his arms crossed. Lisa and Ben flanked him, both looking uncomfortable with the formal complaint that had been filed against their captain. Where I come from, Jake said calmly. We call that bullying, and we don't tolerate it. Your species is new here, Vorth replied. You do not understand. Galactic civilization. The strong protect themselves, and the weak learn to survive by being useful. This has worked for thousands of years. Maybe it's time for a change, Jake said. Vorth's glowing eyes flickered with annoyance. Most species were eager to find their place in the hierarchy when they first arrived. These humans seemed determined to cause problems. Meanwhile, Krex had filed his own complaint with station security. He claimed that Jake had attacked him without provocation and demanded that the humans be punished for their aggressive behavior. These aliens are dangerous, Krex told anyone who would listen. They interfere with natural order. They should be classified as a hostile species and removed from the station, but not everyone agreed with Krex. Some of the other aliens had noticed that the Vrex warrior seemed less confident since his encounter with the human. Word was spreading that Krex had backed down from a fight, which was unusual for his species. Jake didn't care about the politics. After his meeting with Commander Vorth, he went looking for Zara. He found her in the hydroponic gardens replanting the containers that had been destroyed the day before. How are you feeling? Jake asked as he entered the growing chamber. Zara looked up in surprise. She had not expected to see the human again. Most aliens avoided her after helping her once, not wanting to get involved in her problems. I'm fine, she said quietly. Thank you again for yesterday. You didn't have to help me. Yes, I did, Jake said. He knelt down next to her work area and examined the small plants she was tending. What are these? Food plants from my home world, Zara explained. They help clean the air and provide nutrition. I'm trying to adapt them to grow in the station's environment. Jake picked up one of the seedlings carefully. It was unlike anything he had seen on Earth, with purple leaves that seemed to glow softly in the artificial light. This is amazing, he said. How do you know what they need to grow? Zara hesitated. Most aliens thought her empathic abilities were a sign of weakness, but something about Jake's genuine interest made her feel safe. I can feel them, she said softly. Their emotions, their health. When I touch them, I know if they're happy or sad, healthy or sick. Jake's eyes widened. You can communicate with plants? Not exactly communicate, Zara said. More like sense their condition. It's a Kalani ability. Most people think it's useless. Useless? Jake shook his head. Do you have any idea how valuable that would be? We've been trying to grow Earth plants in space for years, but we can only guess what they need. You actually know. For the first time in months, Zara smiled. Jake wasn't looking at her like she was weak or broken. He was looking at her like she was important. Over the next few days, Jake spent his free time in the gardens with Zara. Lisa and Ben joined them, fascinated by her abilities and knowledge. They asked her hundreds of questions about plant biology, emotional sensing, and Kalani culture. "Your people must be incredible farmers," Lisa said, as Zara demonstrated how she could detect plant diseases by touch. "We are peaceful," Zara replied. "We grow things instead of destroying them. Most aliens think that makes us weak." "Growing things takes patience and skill," Ben observed. "There's nothing weak about that." Zara felt something she had almost forgotten: pride in her abilities and her people. The humans saw value where others saw weakness. They treated her like an equal, not like something to be pitied or abused. But their friendship had consequences. Other aliens began to notice that the humans spent time with the lowest-ranking species on the station. Some saw this as proof that humans were also weak. Others wondered if the humans knew something they didn't. Krex was furious. His status among the Vrex had been damaged by his confrontation with Jake, and seeing the human continue to associate with Zara made things worse. He began planning ways to reassert his dominance and prove that humans were just as weak as Kalani. "We should test these humans," Krex told his companions. "Show everyone that they're not as strong as they pretend to be." Meanwhile, Jake's presence began to have an unexpected effect on the station. When he walked through the corridors with Zara, other aliens moved out of their way. Not because they feared him, but because they weren't sure what he might do if they bothered his friend. Zara noticed the change too. For the first time in years, she could walk through the station without being pushed, tripped, or insulted. Aliens who had tormented her before now ignored her completely, which was a vast improvement. "Why do they leave me alone when you're here?" Zara asked Jake one day. "Because bullies are cowards," Jake explained. "They only pick on people who can't fight back. When someone stands up to them, they find easier targets." This was a revelation to Zara. She had always thought the bullying was her fault, that she deserved it because she was weak. Jake was showing her that the problem was with the bullies, not with her. Slowly, Zara began to change. She started walking with her head up instead of staring at the floor. She spoke louder when giving reports about her work. She even began to smile more often. The transformation didn't go unnoticed. Commander Vorth observed that the Kalani worker was becoming more confident and efficient. Her plant yields had improved, and she had solved several air purification problems that had plagued the station for months. Perhaps Vorth admitted to his assistant, "There is more value in the Kalani than we previously calculated." But not everyone was pleased with the changes. Krex watched Zara's growing confidence with growing anger. He had worked hard to break her spirit, and now these humans were undoing all his effort. "This ends now," Krex told his warriors. "We're going to remind everyone who's really in charge here." Jake sensed that trouble was brewing. He had seen the looks Krex gave him in the corridors, the way other aliens whispered when humans passed by. The situation was building toward a confrontation. "Be careful," Jake warned Zara. "I think Krex is planning something." "I'm not afraid anymore," Zara said, and she was surprised to realize it was true. "You've shown me that I don't have to accept being treated badly." Jake smiled at her words, but he remained worried. He had protected Zara from one incident, but he couldn't be with her every moment. And he suspected that Krex's next move would be more dangerous than simple bullying. What Jake didn't realize was that Zara was stronger than either of them knew. The weeks of friendship and encouragement had awakened something in her that had been sleeping for too long. She was ready to stand up for herself in ways that would surprise everyone, including her enemies. The test was coming, and both human and Kalani would discover just how much they had both changed. The alert came through the station's communication system just after morning shift change. There was a problem in Section 12, Level 7. A nest of razorlings had been discovered in the maintenance shafts, and they were becoming aggressive. Someone needed to clean them out before they spread to other parts of the station. Commander Vorth looked at the assignment roster and made a decision that would have consequences he didn't expect. "Send the Kalani worker," he ordered. "This is a job for someone who can calm hostile creatures." The assignment was delivered to Zara while she was working in the hydroponic gardens. She read the work order with growing alarm. Razorlings were dangerous metallic insects that attacked anything that moved. Their claws could cut through metal, and they hunted in groups. Even trained security teams approached them carefully. "This is wrong," Lisa said when Zara showed her the assignment. The human engineer had been helping Zara install new growing systems. "You're a botanist, not a pest control specialist." "I have to do it," Zara said quietly. "If I refuse, they'll find other ways to punish me." But Jake had different ideas. He had been monitoring station communications since arriving, and something about this assignment felt wrong. When he checked the records, he discovered that Section 12 had been scheduled for cleaning 3 times in the past month, but each time the work had been postponed. Now suddenly it was urgent. "This is a setup," Jake told Ben and Lisa. "Someone wants Zara to get hurt." Through careful investigation, they discovered the truth. Krex had arranged for Zara to be assigned to the dangerous job. He had also made sure that the razorling nest was bigger and more aggressive than reported. His plan was simple. Zara would be seriously injured or killed, proving that humans couldn't protect their weak friends. "We have to stop this," Ben said. "We could report it to Commander Vorth," Lisa suggested. "He won't believe us," Jake replied. "And even if he did, he might not care. We need to handle this ourselves." Jake found Zara preparing her equipment for the dangerous assignment. She had gathered the basic tools for calming hostile creatures, but they would be useless against a swarm of razorlings. "You don't have to do this," Jake told her. "Yes, I do," Zara said. "If I don't, they'll keep finding ways to hurt me. At least this way, I face it on my own terms." Jake looked at her with new respect. The frightened being he had rescued in the tunnel was gone. In her place stood someone who was ready to face danger rather than live in fear. "Then we do this together," Jake said. "No," Zara said firmly. "This is my fight. But I want you to know that you've already won. You've shown me that I'm worth protecting, worth caring about. That's more than anyone has ever given me." Jake started to argue, but Zara held up her hand. "You've taught me something important," she said. "Sometimes the only way to stop being a victim is to stop acting like one." Together they developed a plan. Jake would provide backup and support, but Zara would face the razorlings herself. If she succeeded, it would prove that she was stronger than anyone believed. If she failed, at least she would fail trying to stand up for herself. Word spread quickly through the station that the Kalani worker was going to face the razorlings. Dozens of aliens gathered to watch, expecting to see her torn apart by the metallic insects. Krex was among them, confident that his plan would finally succeed. Section 12 was dark and filled with the sound of clicking claws. The razorlings had built their nest in the main power conduit, and their metallic bodies reflected the sparking electricity. There were more of them than expected, at least 20 insects the size of house cats. Zara entered the section slowly, her empathic abilities extended to their maximum range. She could feel the razorlings' emotions immediately: anger, fear, and protective instincts for their young. They weren't naturally aggressive, they were defending their home because they felt threatened. "Easy," Zara whispered, moving closer to the nest. "I'm not here to hurt you." The lead razorling raised its metallic head and clicked its claws in warning. Behind it, the others prepared to attack. But Zara did something unexpected. She sat down on the floor and placed her hands flat on the metal surface. Through her touch, she sent out waves of calm and peaceful intent. She showed the razorlings that she meant no harm, that she understood their need to protect their young. Most importantly, she offered them something no one had ever offered before: respect. The effect was immediate. The lead razorling lowered its claws and tilted its head curiously. The others stopped their aggressive posturing and began to listen to the strange emotions coming from this small blue being. Jake watched from the doorway, amazed. Zara wasn't just calming the razorlings. She was communicating with them, showing them that they could coexist with the other inhabitants of the station. "You need a safe place for your young," Zara said softly. "I can help you find one." Using her empathic abilities, Zara painted a picture in the razorlings' minds. She showed them a section of the station that was rarely used, where they could build their nest without interfering with station operations. She promised them that if they moved voluntarily, they would be left alone. The lead razorling considered this offer. Through Zara's touch, it could sense her honesty and good intentions. Slowly, it clicked its claws in what could only be described as agreement. What happened next amazed everyone watching. The razorlings began to move their nest voluntarily, carrying their eggs and young to the new location Zara had suggested. They worked together with her, accepting her guidance and trusting her promises. Within 2 hours, the dangerous pest problem was solved. The razorlings had moved to a safe location, the power conduits were clear, and no one had been hurt. It was the first time in station history that a razorling infestation had been resolved without violence. Commander Vorth watched the proceedings with growing interest. The Kalani worker had solved a problem that had stumped his best security teams. More importantly, she had done it in a way that benefited everyone involved. Impressive, Vorth admitted to his assistant. Perhaps we have underestimated the practical applications of Kalani abilities. Krex was furious. His plan had failed completely. Instead of being hurt or humiliated, Zara had demonstrated abilities that made her valuable to the station. His attempt to destroy her had only made her stronger. "This isn't over," Krex muttered, but his words sounded hollow even to himself. The other aliens who had gathered to watch were talking among themselves. They had seen something impossible. A member of the supposedly weakest species on the station had succeeded where their strongest warriors had failed, and she had done it without violence, without threats, and without causing harm to anyone. Jake approached Zara as she finished her work. She was tired, but triumphant, her silver eyes bright with satisfaction. "How do you feel?" Jake asked. "Different," Zara said. "I'm not the same person who was hiding in the tunnels a few weeks ago." "No, you're not," Jake agreed. "You're who you were always meant to be." As they walked back through the station corridors, other aliens moved aside for them. But this time, it wasn't out of uncertainty or fear. It was out of respect. Zara had faced her greatest test and emerged victorious. She had proven that strength came in many forms, and that the greatest power was the ability to turn enemies into allies. The bullied victim was gone. In her place stood someone who would never be a victim again. The news of Zara's success with the razorling spread through every level of Nexus Prime within hours. For the first time in station history, a dangerous pest infestation had been resolved without violence, injury, or property damage. The solution was so elegant that even the most prejudiced aliens had to admit it was impressive. Commander Vorth called Zara to his office the next morning. She walked through the corridors with her head held high, no longer the frightened being who had hidden from every shadow. Other aliens nodded to her as she passed, some with respect, others with curiosity. "Your work yesterday was exceptional," Vorth told her when she arrived. His rocky voice carried a tone she had never heard before. Approval. "The razorling solution has saved the station significant resources and prevented potential injuries." "Thank you, Commander," Zara said. "I was just doing my job." "No," Vorth replied. "You were doing much more than that. I am officially commending your performance and recommending you for advanced training in interspecies conflict resolution." Zara blinked in surprise. Advanced training was usually reserved for high-ranking aliens from powerful species. No Kalani had ever been offered such an opportunity. Thank you," she said. "I would be honored to accept." Meanwhile, in the security office, Krex was facing the consequences of his failed scheme. His superiors had discovered his involvement in arranging the dangerous assignment for Zara. Vrex society valued strength and honor in combat, not cowardly plots against defenseless workers. "You have brought shame to our species," his commander told him. "A true warrior faces his enemies directly, not through elaborate traps and schemes." Krex was stripped of his security position and assigned to maintenance duty. The mighty Vrex, warrior who had once terrorized Zara, now spent his days cleaning waste processing units under the supervision of beings he had once considered inferior. But the biggest changes were yet to come. Jake received a message from Earth Command that would alter the course of both his life and Zara's. The UES Liberty had been ordered to begin a deep space exploration mission, mapping unknown sectors and making first contact with undiscovered species. "It's exactly the kind of mission I've always dreamed of," Jake told Lisa and Ben as they reviewed the orders. "But we need specialists who understand alien psychology and biology." "You mean we need Zara?" Lisa said with a smile. Jake found Zara in the observation deck watching ships come and go from the docking bays. She was no longer hiding in maintenance tunnels or empty hydroponic chambers. Now she enjoyed watching the busy life of the station, feeling like she was part of it instead of hiding from it. "Can I ask you something?" Jake said as he joined her at the viewing window. "Of course," Zara replied. "How would you feel about leaving Nexus Prime?" Zara turned to look at him, surprised by the question. "Leave? Where would I go?" "With us," Jake said. "Earth Command wants the Liberty to explore unknown space, make contact with new species. We need someone who understands alien psychology, someone who can communicate with hostile creatures, someone who knows how to turn enemies into allies." "You want me to join your crew?" Zara asked, hardly believing what she was hearing. "Not as a rescued victim," Jake clarified. "As an equal partner. Your skills would be invaluable for what we're trying to do. You've proven that you can solve problems that stump everyone else." Zara looked out at the stars beyond the station. For years she had dreamed of leaving this place, but she had never imagined it would be as anything other than a refugee running from her problems. Now Jake was offering her the chance to leave as an explorer, a specialist, a valued member of a crew. "What about my work here?" she asked. "The station will manage," Jake said. "But out there in unexplored space we'll encounter things that no one has seen before. We'll meet species that might be hostile, or frightened, or just different. We need someone who can bridge those gaps." "I would like that," Zara said softly. "I would like to help other beings the way you helped me." The preparations for departure took 2 weeks. During that time, Zara trained with the human crew, learning their procedures and sharing her knowledge of alien psychology. She developed new protocols for first contact situations and created detailed guides for recognizing emotional states in different species. Other aliens on the station watched these preparations with interest. Some were confused by the humans' choice to include a Kalani in their crew. Others began to reconsider their own assumptions about what made a species valuable. "Perhaps," one Thokari scientist observed to his colleague, "we have been measuring worth by the wrong standards." On the day of departure, a surprising number of beings gathered to see the Liberty off. Zara stood on the bridge wearing a human uniform modified for her physiology, her station clearly marked as xenobiologist and cultural liaison. Commander Vorth came aboard to deliver final diplomatic messages. When he saw Zara at her station, he paused. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I failed to recognize your abilities and allowed harmful behavior to continue unchecked. That was a failure of leadership." "Thank you for saying that," Zara replied. "I hope the changes we've started here will help others who face similar problems." "They will," Vorth promised. "Your example has already inspired new policies regarding interspecies cooperation." As the Liberty undocked from Nexus Prime, Zara watched the massive station shrink in the view screen. She felt no sadness at leaving, only excitement for what lay ahead. "Ready for your first mission?" Jake asked from the captain's chair. "Ready," Zara replied with confidence. The Liberty's sensors had detected unusual signals from a star system 3 days away. The reading suggested intelligent life, but of a type they had never encountered before. It would be their first real test as a team. "Take us to the unknown," Jake ordered. As the ship jumped to faster than light speed, Zara felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. She was no longer a victim hiding from bullies or a worker trying to stay invisible. She was an explorer, heading toward the stars to help humanity understand the vast diversity of life in the galaxy. Behind them, Nexus Prime continued its eternal rotation, but it was already changing. The example of human-Kalani cooperation had planted seeds that would grow into new understanding between species. Bullies like Krex found themselves increasingly isolated as other beings began to value cooperation over domination. And somewhere in the hydroponic gardens, a new Kalani worker tended the plants that Zara had left behind. But this worker walked with confidence, knowing that strength came in many forms and that everyone deserved to be treated with respect. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and now, for the first time, Zara was flying toward them as an equal, partner in humanity's greatest adventure. The bullied victim had become an explorer of the stars, and her journey was just beginning.